what is purpose? How do you find purpose? And we kind of went all over the place with that chat, and where we arrived at the end was that purpose is what you give to it. So like if you find purpose in just hanging out with your friends and enjoying your life, playing the guitar on the beach or whatever it is, skateboarding down the boardwalk, great. If you find that through your marriage and through your children, also great. And so I don't think, because there's this idea of like the kind of the Protestant work ethic that I think runs through a lot of American culture, for example, that you are what you do, or you are how productive you are. And for me, a life is a life. And if you find joy and purpose in listening to music and spending your life that way, I don't think that's a waste of a life. I think that's a life. Like for me, maybe that would be, I would feel that would be a bit of a waste, but then that means I have to choose something else. Doesn't mean that they have to. And so it's this really interesting dichotomy between how people do enjoy their lives and how we're told that we should enjoy our lives. And you mentioned something about, I think, individually how we do it in the U.S. in responsibility, you were saying. And at least in U.S. culture and North America, there's a lot of this like individualism that's really sprouting up, like this really strong individualism. And for some reason, it seems like there's less responsibility and accountability, and it seems like I should be able to do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it, opposed to I do have responsibility to community, or at least accountability to myself. A lot of people are saying if something happens to me, well, who can I find to blame? And I definitely, I would say even in my mid-30s, had a bit of entitlement issue where if something was happening to me, I'd be like, well, this must have been someone's fault. And it's taken me a while to be like, okay, these are the things that I could be accountable and more responsible for. These are the things that maybe were thrust upon me, but ultimately it's my decision how I react to things. And that's been a journey for myself as well, to have responsibility for, okay, this is my life and I need to take ownership of it. So maybe how do you respond? How do you see responsibility to grow up well and live a fun life?
Yeah, so I that really resonated what you were saying, because I do think that the responsibility is the growing up. Like, I think we all go through that stage where we look for other people to blame for stuff, where we are kind of trying to find like the person whose fault it is, and then it is I think this comes back to the radical self-acceptance, actually. When you're talking about radical acceptance, I think there's this piece about radical self-acceptance that helps us to step into that responsibility and give us the freedom to then define what is right for us. And what you were saying earlier about this kind of self-individual mindset, I think, my experience would be not just North America. I think that's happening. We've kind of been, the fact that a personal brand exists in such a way so much across the world, this idea that we are this individual, that is important and that matters, and it is important and it does matter. But I think we are trading off this idea of individual success. I look out for myself. If I put the work in, I will achieve the results. There's some really wonderful things that come out of that. People have done incredible things. They take good personal responsibility. It's not that I think individualism is all wrong, but I think it is out of balance, and we've lost, that's why for a lot of people, the pandemic was actually had some real benefits, because they may be connected with the people next to them. They're connected with the physical people around them. And I think we moved massively away from physical community when we stepped into online in such a great way. And don't get me wrong, like, I have met fantastic people online who I would never have met in person and never connected with and had great conversations with. But also, if our interactions are only online, if we're only thinking about that community that we become more and more bubbled with, we miss out on this whole piece that you were talking about earlier, where you see all of life being lived together. And that's what is so lovely, for example, about what we get in Barcelona, is this culture of a square, right, a plaza, which has all of life in it, because that's the way it's set up to be enjoyed by everybody that is in that space. So whether, you know, the grandparents or, you know, the elderly people in the generation might be sitting on a bench having a chat or interacting with their families or out by themselves, you know, you see lots of different people, and that age range goes, you know, from 90s, 100s all the way down to 6 months old, just born in a pram or being held by their parents, and everything in between. And I think when we forget the fact that we're part of that as well, that we might be part of this online community, that we might have this individualism to go and build our own thing and make that happen, and we sort of trade off the I'm part of a community, I'm important to the people around me, you know, I make a difference right here, right now. I think we are losing something. We're losing the acceptance of other people for all of their choices, and the fact that if I want to go and make my choices, it has to be okay for other people to go and make theirs as well, and live in a kind of peace and acceptance of that. Even if it doesn't feel like I would particularly agree with them or do that approach myself. But then also this other piece of kind of like how, if we're not connecting in with other people, you know, we go to make a difference in the world and it becomes this huge thing of like, how do you solve climate change? How do you solve the problems of inequality that we have? And they're huge, they're massive. Like, how do we step into that? And both, you know, you end up with sides and people see things differently. And then you spend so much time having the conversation about what the right way to do it is and whether it's even a problem or not a problem, that nothing happens. Whereas if we're focused on what's happening around us, you kind of notice if there's a drought and you think maybe I shouldn't be using as much water right now because we're in a drought in my region, in my area. Or you notice if there's homelessness in the area that you're in, and maybe there's something you can do about that very specific thing in the very small, not even in the city you live in, but you know, in the barrio, in the area that you live. And I think COVID offered us a mini step into connecting with the people, or at least being aware of the people and things around us in a physical sense. And my hope would be is that we keep part of that and move into that. So I guess this is a long way of saying I think we have a responsibility to the whole as well as to ourselves. And the more that we can pay attention to that whole in the very real way, in that it is the community around us, the environment around us, then I think we have a chance to grow up well in the world, to be the grown-ups that we maybe want to be, or at least be aware of what that is, because we're paying attention and we're noticing.